First, let's get to our first topic. The government is set to overhaul UK's road safety laws and what is expected to be the biggest shake-up of driving rules for almost 20 years, 2 decades. The reforms will feature a new road safety strategy that the government is set to unveil this autumn, amid concerns that current safety campaigns are ineffective. Now, between 2000 and 2010, serious road casualties almost halved to 24,000. But since then, they've risen by nearly 20%. Drivers over the age of 70 would be banned from the roads if they fail compulsory eye tests under the government's new plans. As part of the plan, the government are looking at tougher drink driving regulations as well, which would see drink driving thresholds reduced from 35 micrograms of alcohol per 100 milligrams of breath to 22 micrograms. Now, that would bring it in line with Scotland. If you're watching up there, that's what the existing limits are north of the border. Now, Reem, do you think this is a good rule? Should we have zero tolerance? Let's start there before we go to the eye tests for alcohol and driving. In other words, take it to a stage, as it pretty much is in Scotland, where you say, you're going out, don't have a drink.
Yeah, no, I think this is an awful idea, partly because the statistics don't show that that has a significant impact on drivers specifically. I mean, Scotland, we haven't seen all of the long-term impacts of this, but often what will probably happen is that there won't be a limit and people will just lie about it, right? I mean, most countries in the world have an understanding that there is a safe level of drink driving, and it is, you know, it goes without saying, if you are drunk and you are driving, you are reckless, and it is absolutely abysmal and you should not do that. But let's think about this with the 1 glass of wine or 1 pint of beer.
Which is pretty much what it is.
Pretty much what the limit is at the moment. And most countries say, you know what, that is an acceptable limit, and you are more than capable of driving when you've had that amount of alcohol.
Why they changed the law in Scotland? You don't agree with that, do you, Henry?
No, I don't think so. I believe that our system is the laxest when it comes to how many milligrams per unit of blood you're allowed. Scotland is more serious about this. I think we are less serious than most other European countries. And you reckon that there's no relationship between the amount of alcohol people consume and the likelihood...
That's not what I've said. What I've said is no relationship between the limit, the legal limit, and how many accidents
but it acts as a framework. You know, if you know that you're, I mean, back in the day you were allowed 2 small glasses of wine. I think it's now, is it 1 pretty much? You know, but people would push the limit. People push the limit where they think the law is, what they think is socially and legally acceptable.
Well, the ultimate thing is about making it safer. And, you know, when this first came out in Scotland, it's a kind of peculiar thing that, you know, north of the border, it's much, much less. There was a huge pushback from bar owners that were worried that it was going to have an impact on their businesses. Now, as I understand it, by and large, there's general acceptance that it has reduced the number of deaths on the road, and socially, the situation has just simply changed, where people say, look, if we're going out, there'll be a designated driver, I'm not going to drink. Isn't it really just about safety, Reem?
I think part of the problem is that those particular individuals will drink anyway, right? If you're going out there and you're going to be drinking in the first place, you're going to do that. And I think that my real problem with this is it's the increasing size of the nanny state. The government are pushing the limits increasingly and saying to adults, here's what you can and cannot do. It is safe. We have to all agree with the statistics that show this. It is safe to have 1 glass of wine and drive. So why should the government make it illegal?
It depends for whom. It might be safe for me if I've had a meal and I've taken my time over 2-3 hours. It may not be safe for you because you've got a smaller body mass. You may not be able to tolerate as much alcohol as me, and I won't be able to tolerate as much alcohol as somebody who weighs 250 kilograms. But it makes it easier for people if it's very clear in the law that you know that if you are the designated driver, you don't drink at all. You could have an alcohol-free beer, alcohol-free wine. That's fine. The taste is getting better and better. I mean, 300 people a year are killed in accidents where at least 1 driver was over the limits.
At least 1 drink. Now, that's only sort of part of it. And generally speaking, there's a kind of degree of agreement, certainly, about not drinking and driving, but about the limits. It's about, as Henry describes, what your level of tolerance is.
I think it's really easy for us to be sat in London and say, oh, well, you know, you just go out, you take public transport. But in so many places across the UK, you cannot get to your local pub without driving. You cannot go anywhere. And I'm really worried. You know, we're already living in a society where lots of people are really lonely. Lots of people really struggle to meet with other people and socialise. And I think this is just going to be one extra barrier to the socialisation of this country.
Well, one wonders, you know, why it's had an impact in Scotland and how much I think it's half a pint that they're allowed there. Now, as part of these driving changes, the government is also set to introduce a law to punish drivers with penalty points if their passengers fail to wear seatbelts. Existing law states that 3 penalty points will be issued to drivers, just to be clear, who are not wearing a seatbelt. But this would make the driver responsible for their passengers. Henry, what do you make of the seatbelt rule? Are people really still not wearing seatbelts?
Some people are not wearing seatbelts. I'm unashamedly nanny on this, Reem, definitely. I mean, I drive a fair amount and I do take passengers. Most people buckle up when in the front passenger seat, but often people are reluctant to, especially people who are maybe a little bit more portly, and they may find themselves a bit too constrained, you know, to use a seatbelt going across their shoulder. And it gets very annoying because you say to them, look, it's not just about your safety, it's about my safety, because if I brake sharply, you're going to go flying into the back of my head and you could kill me.
Very difficult legally, I would have thought, especially if you've got grown-ups in the back.
But it's your car, you don't have to take them.
Hold the driver liable. That's an interesting point. Yeah. What do you make of this? More of the nanny state for you?
It is more nanny state. I think the interesting point, as you just said, is the legal aspect of this. You know, where you're shifting responsibility for somebody else's actions onto a different individual. I don't know how that would. Well, maybe you could tell us, how would that hold up in court?
It'd be very, very difficult, I would have thought. Henry's point, which is to say at the beginning of the journey, it would be a bit like being on a boat, where as a captain of the boat, you say you comply with the rules of the sea. That means you've got to have a life jacket, etc. Same thing legally, theoretically, with where I would justify it. Get in my car, you put your seatbelt on before we leave, otherwise you're not allowed to travel with me.
Hopefully, I mean, thankfully, in recent years, I mean, cars will warn you if somebody is not wearing a seatbelt. And you'll actually have a little kind of graphic or a digital grid which will tell you they're behind you and to your right or to your left. And you'll say to them, look, that beeping noise is going to continue until you put your seatbelt on.
Where I'm worried about this is with Ubers or with other, apps that result in people that are strangers driving you. The worry is that if the legal requirement is on the driver and they're actually receiving the burden of that, what happens if somebody in the back, yes, they put their seatbelt on and then they just simply take it off? Is the legal repercussion still on the driver?
That's an interesting question. But lastly, the question is for everybody, does this make us all safer, people who are out on the road? That's the overriding
It does. I mean, think about cars these days compared to maybe when we were growing up. Cars are getting bigger, they're getting heavier. The average car is now about 1,400 kilos.
That's
well over a ton. Well, they're getting safer, but it depends who's driving them. Because a car driven at 20 miles an hour that weighs 500 kilograms is less likely to kill a small child or a small person.
I've got a solution.
But a car being driven at 30 miles an hour that weighs 1.5 tons, he's going to kill almost anybody.
Well, brace yourself, because Reem has got a solution before the break.
I was talking to Matthew Allwright about this a couple of weeks ago. I was in Austin, Texas very recently, and they have driverless cars. So they are cars that have sensors all around. And I went in one, and it was nobody's allowed in the driver's seat, but you're allowed in the passenger seat. It means you can be as drunk as you possibly can be, and you can still be in a car. Doesn't cost as much because you're not paying for the wage of the driver, and it is so much safer than human drivers.
We've had 20 deaths.
Doesn't quite answer your difficulty that you had earlier about this really affecting rural communities most. All very well to get public transport if it's available to you for many people around our shared nation.
Legalised driverless cars.
Well, we'll hear about that in due course. Terrifying as far as I'm concerned. But after the break, first, is it time to force drivers over 70 to take an eye test and ban them if they fail? Now, here's the number: 0207 862 2222. Give us a ring. Let us know what you think about this. Drivers over the age of 70 would be banned from the roads if they fail compulsory eye tests under a radical overhaul of the UK's road safety laws being drawn up by the government. Now, the current eyesight test, if you're taking a driving test, now means you must be able to read, with glasses or contact lenses if necessary, a car number plate made after the 1st September 2001 from 20 metres away. Let's take a quick look at this. Now, I am looking at it. I'm going to cover one eye. I'm not quite 20 metres away. Henry, allegedly, you are 50 plus a bit of VAT.
Yes, I am.
And so a little bit closer to the age we're talking about. You're also furthest away, so I'm going to ask you, can you read that number plate, Henry Bonsu?
I can. I have myopia, but I had my eyes lasered some years ago. I've got blended vision, so with both my left and my right eye, I can say JV25 Rob, R-O-B.
There you are. Well, it looks like you'd pass your driving test enough, certainly, to get through the eye-seeing aspect of it. But do you think
It's
this
a
is...
zero, not a
Okay,
O.
0.
I mean, stop splitting hairs, but I do want to go to Terry. What do you make of this, Terry?
I think it's a very sensible idea. I mean, but having said that, I suspect most drivers over the age of 70 are already having regular tests.
Right. Well, thanks
The other
for...
problem,
Yeah, go on.
the other problem which
Yeah.
needs addressing, it's not just eyesight over a given distance, it's changing focal lengths. Now, most cars are required for you to take your eyes off the road to look at a screen to change anything in the car.
Terry,
and by the time you've looked and gone back,
Right. That's
Your
a
eyes can't
very,
adjust.
very interesting point. A number of people calling to say that now it's not just about driving a basic car and being able to see, but also about changing concentration from screens...
field of view.
...onto the field, exactly as Henry puts it, the field of view. Peter, you're in the West Midlands. Just to give you a number here, the number of drivers over the age of 60 involved in collisions where someone is killed or seriously injured on Britain's roads has increased. Get this, Peter, in the West Midlands, 47% in the last 15 years. So is the idea of having compulsory seeing sight tests a good idea, Peter?
Morning, Rob.
Morning.
No, it isn't.
Why not?
Not like the gentleman just said before. People are already having regular eye tests. I'm one of those. I have a regular eye test every 2 years. I've only been retired 4 years. I was only 70 just a few months ago,
Congrats.
and now I'm going to be penalised by this government.
Well, the question is, I wonder if that's the case, Peter. I mean, you're somebody very sensibly looks after his health. You know, if your eyes are OK, the opticians will say a minimum, I think, once every 2 years, sometimes a little bit less. If you already are getting your eyes tested anyway, well, what difference does it make, Peter, to you?
None whatsoever, but the fact is, if you're going to do it when they're a bit older, not when they've just started their retirements.
Yeah.
Only that.
I mean, but there is
Just
such a
one
thing.
more.
Go on.
There is such a thing called age-related macular degeneration. And if you're getting regular eyesight tests, Peter, you'll be aware of this. It's about the degeneration of your ability to see. It's to do with your lens, your cornea, etc. And a lot of people, they really pride themselves on their independence, their ability to drive, especially when you're retired. You're able to get out and about and you feel free. And when you take away somebody's freedom to drive, it can really destroy their social life. But safety for everybody else is also very important.
Yeah, that is important. I'm going to come in a second to Dean. Just hang on a second, Reem, because, again, the numbers out here are important because it's why the government are trying to make policy in the first place. About 14% of licence holders account for a quarter of those killed on the roads. But just to be clear, that older drivers make up about 14% of all licence holders, and that people aged over 75 and under 25 have the highest risk of being killed on the road. Yep. This is part of, if you like, a package of solutions, of ideas rather, to solve that problem. Dean, you're in Birmingham. Is the issue eyesight? Should 70-year-olds be forced to go through this before being allowed to keep their driving licences?
Morning, Rob.
Morning, Dean.
Reem and Henry.
Hey, Dean.
Hi.
I believe it should be lowered. Basically, I went blind when I was 40.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm registered blind
right.
due to type 1 diabetes.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But Dean, you know... Go on, Dean, sorry.
Because I'm type 1 diabetic anyway, I had to
give up the driving license.
Do a medical every 3 years.
Right, OK. And I think the point that you're making and other people are making that have got pre-existing health conditions which affect their eyesight, and also potentially, presumably, as a type 1 diabetic, you might be hypoglycemic, you might be affected during the course of driving, is that you have to have regular medical checks in order to satisfy people that you're going to be safe on the road, the point that Dean's calling in for. So why is there a problem in any event?
Well, that's the problem. Well, this is the actual point, that people like Dean are already being tested regularly. And when we're thinking about this, I mean, Henry's right. As you get older, you're more likely to lose your eyesight or have worsening eyesight as you get older. It is also true that the proportion of people that are older that have been in accidents has increased. However, as a total proportion, younger people under 25s are far more likely to be in accidents than older people. Actually, older people are far less likely. They've got a lower proportion of all casualties. So I think it's important that, when we're looking at these statistics and the government are looking at all of these safety measures, which I'm against because I think that it just is further nannying. But even if we're looking at the stats, if you're going to say, okay, over everybody in the population, who is causing the most accidents? It is young people.
But we have introduced measures to try and deal with that. Insurance is very expensive.
Why are we going after
provisional
the
license holders?
First?
Provisional
No,
it's not first.
Lonely
No, this is later. We have worked hard to try and mitigate for the kind of natural exuberance and recklessness of youth. And so young people who have got a provisional, they have to have somebody qualified sitting with them. And also, if you've just passed your test, also there are restrictions on you too, if you're young.
Well, just to be clear, what the numbers are out there. There was a YouGov poll in 2023, and the majority of people, 29% strongly support this idea, and 36% somewhat support the idea of when you reach the age of 70, you should have to take your driving test all over again. Now, think about that before you're calling. Thanks for calling, Dean. After the break, we're taking more of your calls on whether it's time to force drivers over the age of 70 to take an eye test. And straight to more of your calls on this. Is it time to force drivers over 70 to take an eye test and ban them if they fail? 0207 862 2222. That's the number. Give us a ring. Let us know what you think about this. But first, we're going to go straight to Chester and to Charles. Is it time to ban 70-year-olds if they can't adequately pass an eye test?
No, I don't think it's right. I agree with your lady colleague there. It's like a nanny state, but it's like it's targeting the elderly all the time for this, that, penalising. Also, you're saying we may have to retake our complete test. I'm classed as disabled. I would actually fail the theory test because I'm dyslexic. So a lot of people will be left wondering what would happen to them, where they're just going to sit and wither away. But then if they're going to target the elderly, I don't need to target the youngsters before they take their test, that they take a drugs test. Because there's a lot of these youngsters that are getting licences that are on drugs.
Well, a lot of people are saying the same thing. Although, thanks for calling in, Charles. You make that point about the younger people, but the law, thanks, Charles, is actually a lot heavier on young people. If, for example, you get 6 points in your first couple of years of driving, you're up for the chop, you get banned. In other words, there's laws which do disproportionately affect young people because we are worried about their driving. The question is, should similar laws in terms of safety also apply to the elderly in circumstances where there's been a massive increase, about 50% over 15 years? But Charles makes a point, this could penalise elderly drivers, many of whom were never, for example, asked to do the theory test. Gareth, you're in Gloucestershire. What do you make of this? You think it's time, if you're 70 years old, just like other people are phoning and say if you've got a previous existing health condition, you should be examined in order to demonstrate you're safe on the road?
I don't think there's any doubt about that. If I had an accident because of my eyesight or for any other reason medically, and I hurt somebody, then I don't think I could live with that.
Yeah.
And I think that could almost be a legal thing. Yes, I agree with it entirely.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who feel similarly that this is just about good health. If you've got a pre-existing condition where there may even be the thinnest risk of your driving being impaired on the road, you need to have a doctor's certificate. So what's the difference? And most people over 70 get their eyes tested in any event. Gareth, thanks for calling. Over in Berkshire, Gordon, what do you think? Do you think if you're 70, it's time to get immediately to the optician or get off the road?
I'm 79. I was on the 24th of July.
Well, happy birthday, belated.
Yeah, thanks very much. And it's a pleasure to speak to you finally.
Nice to
And I was in the motor trade all my life.
Right.
And I had a heavy goods licence as well, which I take the big tests for.
And sorry to interrupt you, Gordon, but also for an HGV licence, you also have to have a regular medical as well, don't you?
Yes, you have a regular medical every time the licence has to be renewed.
Right.
But I gave it up because I wasn't using it, and the cost of it, I thought, I don't need it anymore.
Right.
So about 18 years ago, I gave it up. I live on just off a main road here,
right.
The main A4,
yeah.
junction 4 of the M4. I took my neighbour on Friday down to our local rubbish tip.
Right.
Because the fridge he had to get rid of wouldn't fit his car.
Right, so he got rid of a fridge. What happened on the road, Gordon?
So we came down, went out,
yeah.
went down to the traffic lights. When we come to the third set, which goes into left to the big trading estate.
Right, what happened?
Well, I pulled up in the right-hand lane because it's all filtered.
Yeah.
And sat there with my neighbour, who's a taxi driver in London at night. We sat there, I pulled up, because the lights changed as we got to them.
What bad driving did you see? I'd love to take him on. I imagine you're like one of my clients. I need to get to the point, Gordon. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll just tell you now.
Yeah.
We stopped, sat there. There'd been a few minutes red, just starting to move the traffic from the right to go across.
Right.
And straight down, round, through the red light, left into the trading estate, went a black van, a Volkswagen van. Like
and was it being driven by a septuagenarian, an old bloke who couldn't see where he was going?
No, it was a younger bloke, because I didn't see the driver, but me passenger, my neighbour saw him.
And so presumably your point, Gordon, is that, look, it's not the older drivers that are the problem. Most of them don't get eye tests in any event. They don't need to be examined. This is really about there's good and bad drivers in every age group, and there's young people who are driving badly. Presumably that's your point, isn't it, Gordon?
But we've got a lot of it round here.
Yeah.
Jumping lights.
Yeah.
And also... Right. They're colourblind because they don't see the lights and they ignore them and just go straight through.
So bad drivers come in every age and every side, and it's about every size, and it's about responsibility. Thank you, Gordon, and belated happy birthday. Over in Berkshire, Denise, you've heard what Gordon has to say. It's not about age. I mean, older people are sensible with their health in any event. Gordon over there, for example, with an HGV licence, had to have a medical test before renewing it. So why should the government be asking older people to go and have an eye test, or in some cases, some suggestion they may have to retake their test? Do you think that's a bad idea, Denise?
Well, forget all this talk about the nanny state. I think, as a retired nurse who worked in A&E and saw the amount of people that came in because of accidents, and some of it's across the board with drivers. But my husband, for instance, who's driven all over the world, in most countries, he's driven right on the left side of the road, the right side of the road, because of his job. And about 3 or 4 years ago, and he's always been a perfect driver, about 3 or 4 years ago, I noticed he was becoming a little hesitant.
Right.
And I said to him, and he disputed it, but I said to him, you know, your driving is you need to go for an eye test. They found he had macula. Now, you can drive. Yeah. Once you've been diagnosed with macula, you have to tell the DVLA.
Denise, I'm sorry we can't spend more time on this, but I do want to ask you very quickly, do you think, because you're his wife, you noticed that and you said, go and get your eyes tested. Do you think, you know your husband better than us, do you think he would have done that without you nudging him and being a nurse?
Possibly not, because I think he'd got used to not, probably, he wasn't even aware. It was a gradual decline. I don't think he was aware of it. And personally, I'm 76, personally, I think anything that will keep people protected, and we have to accept that as we get older, our eyesight falters. Of course, people when they're younger have it. But obviously things start to wear out when you're older. And I think anything at all that keeps the
road users safe.
We have too many cars on the road.
Well, I hear you, Denise. I've got to go to the next caller, but one of the things I want to take from what Denise has said, we're going to come to you both in a second, but before we're going to go to Maria in Shropshire, is that here's a wife who says, go and get your eyes tested. Whether or not the husband would have done and carry on creating a danger on the road is another question. Very quickly, Maria in Shropshire, as I understand it, you think people's eyes over the age of 70 should be tested every year for them to keep their licence. Is that right?
Yes, I do, certainly. I go every year because I'm on warfarin. Right. And you have to have our test regularly. But yeah, people should. If it means we keep people safe on the road, they should have the house tested. It's the same with drink driving. You shouldn't drink if you're going to drive.
Right.
And I think, yes, every year.
Well, you make your point very powerfully. It's a very simple one. The idea is you keep people safe on the road. Over the age of 70, there is an enhanced risk of your eyesight being depleted, so get a test. Same thing, zero tolerance for Maria over in Shropshire. Very quickly over to you, Reem. There's a couple of callers saying, you know, this is the nanny state. There are bad drivers in every age group.
There are bad drivers in every age group, and this is the problem. If we're going to be testing absolutely everybody in the entire population every single year, this will cost loads and it will be extremely expensive.
Henry?
I think safety first. In 1926, over 4,800 people died per year because of road accidents, you know, with their version of the car. Now it's down to 1,600. It's because of nanny state.
Well, thank you for all your calls on this. We mentioned the drink driving limit earlier. Well, Matt wants to hear what you think later. Should